On the surface, it looked like nothing special. The Cleveland Browns beat the Philadelphia Eagles 22-13 in a routine preseason game. No playoff implications, no wild finishes, just another warm-up for the real season. But inside NFL headquarters, total mayhem. Phones were ringing non-stop. Executives were scrambling into emergency meetings. Conversations between top media networks turned from strategy to crisis control. Something happened Friday night that sent shockwaves through broadcast partners, league officials, and advertising giants alike. Because the final score didn't just reflect a win. It revealed a terrifying truth the NFL has been desperately trying to bury. Millions of viewers aren't watching football anymore unless one rookie quarterback is playing. And when the Browns benched him, 3 million people simply turned off their TVs. Let that sink in. 3 million fans disappeared the second Shedeur Sanders didn't set foot on the field. To the average viewer, that might sound dramatic, but to the billion-dollar empire the NFL has become, this was an earthquake. And here's the real kicker. The NFL knew this could happen. They allegedly warned the Browns. They invested millions marketing Sanders as the future of the league. They built viewership projections and global brand strategies around this one 22-year-old. And then, just days before a nationally televised game, he gets benched. Not due to injury, not due to poor performance, but because the coaching staff decided he should rest. That single move sent a ripple through every corner of the NFL's business. Broadcast contracts, gambling platforms, fan engagement, fantasy leagues, even international expansion. And the numbers don't lie. In just one night, a meaningless preseason game became one of the costliest PR disasters in recent league history. All because the NFL quietly built its future around a single player. And when that player didn't show up, everything fell apart. But this wasn't just one bad night. It's the start of a story that might expose the league's most dangerous vulnerability. It didn't take long for the numbers to start pouring in, and what they showed left network executives speechless. Just 1 week earlier, the Browns faced off against the Panthers in a preseason game that barely mattered. But because Sanders made his debut, 8.7 million people tuned in. That's playoff-level traffic for a warm-up. Then came Friday night. Same team, similar time slot, bigger market opponent. And yet, the moment Sanders was ruled out, viewership crumbled. 5.8 million. That's not a simple drop. That's nearly 3 million viewers gone. Vanished like they were never interested in the game at all. It's the worst drop involving playoff contenders in 7 years. Industry insiders didn't call it a dip. They called it an abandonment event. And things only got worse. By halftime, ratings had already dropped another 18%. Viewers weren't passively disappointed. They were actively switching the channel, logging off apps, clicking over to YouTube, Netflix, anything else. Executives on post-game conference calls reportedly sat in stunned silence. Streaming platforms ran emergency data reports. Ad buyers hit the panic button. Social media teams had nothing to push. No highlights, no buzz, no virality. Football fans hadn't just tuned out. They had given the NFL a wake-up call. The product, no matter how technically solid, wasn't enough without a star like Sanders on the field. This wasn't just about one player missing one game. This was the first tangible proof that the league's most valuable asset isn't football, it's attention. And without Sanders, they lost it almost instantly. Shedeur Sanders didn't just show up on the NFL's radar. He took over the whole grid. This wasn't gradual. It wasn't subtle. By the time his name was on a jersey, the league had already made him the face of its future. And not just because he's a talented quarterback. Sanders is young, charismatic, media savvy, everything the NFL needs to stay relevant with Gen Z and digital-first audiences who don't watch full games and don't care about traditional teams. They care about moments, viral clips, personalities, and every time Shedeur touches the ball, it feels like something worth rewinding. Behind the scenes, the league knew it. That's why they bet big. Marketing teams rolled out full-scale campaigns before he threw a single NFL pass. His preseason debut was covered like a mid-season playoff game. Social media teams had highlight clips ready to post within minutes. TV promos leaned heavily into his storyline. They embedded documentary crews with the Browns, created visuals, graphics, Instagram reels, all centered entirely around Sanders. Even international broadcast deals requested Browns games explicitly to feature him. From Europe to South America, audiences were requesting one thing. Where can we watch Shedeur Sanders play? Because unlike most rookies, Sanders didn't need to prove himself to fans. He already had a fan base. Add in the fact that he's Deion Sanders' son, and the built-in narrative practically wrote itself. Simply put, he wasn't just a player. He was the gravitational force pulling millions into the NFL's orbit. So when Cleveland benched him with zero warning, they didn't just sideline a QB. They pulled the plug on every viewer who had tuned in just to see him. By Saturday morning, it wasn't just fans in meltdown, it was the NFL commissioner himself. According to multiple inside sources, Roger Goodell personally contacted the Browns ownership group after the game. Not with curiosity, but with outright fury. Because here's the part fans didn't see. The league warned Cleveland ahead of time. Officials had already given the team internal viewership projections, data showing just how much of a draw Sanders had become. They spelled it out. If he plays, ratings spike. If he sits, your game disappears. These weren't estimates. These were hard numbers based on his debut and even college-era buzz. Even the international partners, Germany, Mexico, London, had requested Browns preseason games because of one player, Sanders. And then suddenly, days before the Browns were set to take the national spotlight again, Stefanski pulls him from the lineup in the name of injury management, despite Sanders being fully active in practice with no designation. The league had spent all summer building an entire story arc around this kid. Millions in marketing, exclusive promos, entire broadcast schedules bent around his games. Then, he doesn't play. To Goodell and the rest of the league office, that wasn't just a coaching decision. That was a disaster. Imagine being the NFL, where the commercial machine is running at full speed, counting on one player to prop up a billion-dollar narrative. Then being told, yeah, actually, he's gonna sit this one out. The call from Goodell wasn't just about anger, it was about damage. Because while the Browns were focused on what made sense inside their locker room, the league was dealing with the aftershocks of a business quake. Ratings gone, advertisers panicking, fans abandoning the product after one missing name on the roster sheet. It wasn't just bad PR. It was proof of something far worse. Without Sanders, the NFL's magic trick falls apart. On paper, Friday night had everything going for it. Two legit NFL fan bases, a packed stadium, a primetime slot, perfect weather. The type of setup the league usually dreams about when planning preseason broadcasts. This should have been a ratings win. But without Sanders on the field, the entire event spiraled into a public disaster. From the opening kickoff, cameras kept scanning the Cleveland sideline, searching. Commentators awkwardly danced around the story, trying to explain Sanders' absence without acknowledging the fury online, because the outrage had already started. By halftime, ratings had dropped 18%. Third quarter, another 15% gone. By the final whistle, this wasn't just a down week. It became the least-watched preseason game featuring playoff contenders in over 7 years. And here's the most terrifying part. The game was actually good. Cleveland's defense showed out. Huge turnovers, solid runs, the kind of gritty, balanced football that usually keeps fans engaged. From a pure sports perspective, it checked all the boxes. But it didn't matter, because no one was watching. This moment exposed a brutal truth the NFL has avoided for years. Today's fans don't just watch football. They follow personalities. They scroll for highlights. They share moments. They aren't here for two teams locked in a battle. They're here for the person they clicked on from TikTok last week. And when Sanders wasn't there to give them a story, they left instantly. Within hours, social engagement surrounding the game fell flat. TikTok had no viral clips. Instagram drills that racked up millions in week 1 barely cracked 5 digits. Twitter threads stopped talking about the Browns' defense and started torching Stefanski instead. The product wasn't the problem. The promotion wasn't the problem. The problem was simple. The star was gone. And in the modern NFL, losing your star means losing everything. The collapse didn't end with bad ratings. It spread fast. Within hours, the NFL was staring down the kind of numbers that make sponsors stop returning phone calls. TikTok, completely flat. Sanders' debut had created over 47 million impressions in just a few days. Clips that flooded For You pages, hashtags, and reaction videos across the platform. This time, 0 viral moments. Literally none. Instagram Reels that previously broke through algorithmic noise disappeared into obscurity. Twitter didn't recap the game. It roasted the Browns. And not because they lost, because they benched the only player people tuned in to see. This wasn't just a digital misfire. It was an all-out brand collapse. NFL shop traffic tanked by over 40% in just 72 hours. Merch sales fell off a cliff. Orders for Sanders jerseys were canceled by the thousands. The Browns' team store, which had just bulk ordered inventory for Sanders-led demand, was now facing overstock and unsellable product. Retail partners took notice, and they weren't happy. Executives from licensed merch companies, marketing reps, and even holiday campaign planners started flooding league offices with the same question. What happens if this guy doesn't play again? And internationally, it was worse. Streaming numbers in Europe dropped nearly 35%. In South America, engagement practically disappeared overnight. Viewers in Asia were reportedly confused by his absence and openly questioning if the NFL could be trusted to showcase its stars. Friday night wasn't just one mistake. It triggered uncertainty across every arm of the league's revenue pipeline. This is the part fans rarely see. The machine behind the broadcast. The contracts, partners, algorithms, and merch graphs, all tied directly to one thing, attention. And it turns out, Sanders wasn't just a promising QB. He was holding the entire attention economy together. So, the moment he sat down, the dominoes started falling. And nobody, not lead officials, not sponsors, not streaming platforms, was prepared for what crashed next. If you thought the damage stopped at merch, think again. What happened Friday night sent shockwaves through the sports betting world, and those shockwaves hit dollar signs. In the weeks leading up to his appearances, sportsbooks had been churning out prop bets tied to Sanders. Passing yards, rushing stats, total completions, even first-quarter TD predictions. These weren't niche bets. They were high-volume markets that pulled in serious cash. One industry insider called Sanders a quarterback who functions like an entire fantasy league by himself. And that's no exaggeration. The Friday before his debut, betting volume on Browns-related props hit seasonal highs. The Friday after he sat, that same volume dropped by over 60%. To a sportsbook like FanDuel or DraftKings, that isn't a dip, it's a nightmare. Executives there reportedly began questioning whether they could continue building weekly promotions around players who might not take the field. Because when Sanders doesn't play, the entire fantasy football universe shifts. Content creators, viewership down. Fantasy podcasts, engagement fell off. Football Reddit threads, overrun with frustration, not analysis. Even daily fantasy platforms, built on the hype of player performance, like Sanders, saw significant drop-offs in contest entries. And that dip doesn't just impact consumers, it bleeds into league partnerships. Remember, the NFL has billion-dollar deals with gambling platforms. Sanders isn't just a draw for teens scrolling TikTok. He's become the backbone of an entirely new gambling demographic. Young, digital-first fans who don't sit through full games, but do place bets on player props before kickoff. When he's out, the buzz dies instantly. For the first time, the NFL had to confront a terrifying reality. A single player's availability could destabilize its most profitable modern revenue stream. And worse, there's nothing in the current CBA or league rules that ensures a team has to play him, no matter what's at risk. So now, sportsbooks, fantasy platforms, ad buyers, and league partners are all asking the same question. What if this happens again? Because if the answer is it might, then Friday night may have just jeopardized the NFL's biggest financial play since legal gambling began. Here's where things take a sharp turn, from disappointing decision to full-blown controversy. Because despite what the Browns told the media, league insiders say there was no injury, no setback, no medical limitation. Shedeur Sanders was fully suited, fully practiced, and fully ready. So why didn't he play? That's the question tearing through NFL circles. And the answer, according to insiders, has nothing to do with health and everything to do with power. Sources close to the situation say this wasn't a trainer's call. It had nothing to do with scans or soreness. Sanders was physically prepared to start. But head coach Kevin Stefanski reportedly made a purely coaching decision: sit the rookie and manage his developmental load. Translation? He wanted to remind everyone who's in charge. Because inside the Browns organization, there's a growing power struggle. Ownership wants Sanders playing every snap. Sponsors do too. League execs, especially Roger Goodell, definitely do. Even abroad, broadcast partners specifically asked, is Sanders playing Friday? But NFL sidelines traditions still give coaching staffs full control over personnel. And Stefanski wasn't about to let the front office, the internet, or the league tell him who to start. That might sound normal, until you realize one decision just cost the NFL millions of dollars and jeopardized relationships with advertisers, international partners, and streaming platforms. Was it worth that? More importantly, was it necessary? It's not like Sanders had been struggling, quite the opposite. His flashy playing style, composed presence, and fan magnetism turned preseason film into viral content. The buzz he generated was undeniable. So Stefanski's explanation, injury management, felt more like a smokescreen than transparency. And that's what scared people the most. Because if coaches have the unchecked power to bench the only player keeping young fans tuned in, what does that mean for the league's future? This moment signaled something deeper, a growing tug-of-war between the business of football and the game of football. Pause. On one side, marketing departments, streaming executives, international networks. On the other, coaches defending tradition, structure, and control. Stefanski might have protected organizational philosophy, but he sparked a ratings crisis and potentially fractured trust between the league and the very audiences it spent years trying to build. The NFL now finds itself in an impossible position. Either respect a head coach's control, or admit the product no longer thrives on strategy. It thrives on spotlight. What happens when one player becomes bigger than the game itself? That's the question ripping through the NFL boardrooms right now. Because in the aftermath of Sanders' absence and everything it triggered, some inside the league are reportedly pushing for something no one thought possible: mandating that marquee players appear in nationally televised games. Yes, you read that right, a rule that would force coaches to play their stars. If implemented, this would be an unprecedented power shift, tipping control away from team staffs and toward the league office. It would essentially declare that the NFL is an entertainment product first, and a sport second. The logic, according to insiders, simple. Viewers aren't tuning in for next man up. They're not staying engaged for depth chart experiments or developmental caution. They're watching for names, for personalities, for storylines they followed from high school to Saturdays to Sunday night football. Which means when a player like Shedeur Sanders doesn't take the field, it's not a coaching decision anymore. It's a corporate liability. Sources claim that in the days following the Browns-Eagles disaster, internal memos began circulating. Meetings were held with media partners. The phrase, minimum star availability requirements, was floated. A concept straight out of NBA load management debates, now entering the NFL conversation. And suddenly, a rookie quarterback, just a few weeks into his pro career, is at the center of a conversation that could rock the structure of pro football to its core. But there's one major problem. The players' union is already watching closely, because if the NFL starts forcing players to suit up regardless of coaching preference, physical readiness, or strategic flexibility, it opens the door to massive legal and labor implications. Does a rookie now carry different obligations than a 10-year vet? Will medical discretion be challenged? Who's liable if a mandated appearance results in injury? And here's the biggest wildcard. This actually gives Sanders more leverage than anyone expected. If one rookie can cause this much chaos simply by sitting out a preseason game, what happens during contract negotiations? During CBA talks? What does it mean when your presence alone is worth 3 million viewers? The league may think it can pull the strings, but in trying to enforce star participation, it might just prove to players and fans that one name can shift the entire balance of power. Here's the brutal irony. Cleveland actually won the game. The Browns' defense looked locked in. They swarmed the ball. The run game was smooth. Special teams cleaned up. On paper, it was a solid all-around performance. Exactly the kind of preseason momentum teams love to build on. And yet, nobody cared. Not the networks, not the fans, not even the post-game media coverage. That scoreboard victory, 22-13, meant absolutely nothing in the wake of the chaos Sanders' absence had caused. No one was talking about defensive schemes or coaching strategy. The conversation had completely shifted. Everything came back to one question: why didn't he play? ESPN spent their airtime breaking down viewer drop-off charts, not touchdown highlights. Talk shows debated the exposure of the NFL's reliance on star players, not Cleveland's cornerback depth. It was like the game happened in the background of a much bigger story, the collapse of football's illusion. Because for years, the NFL sold us on the idea that the game itself was the reason we watched. Team loyalty, competition, grit. But Friday proved that's no longer true. That formula doesn't hold weight with younger fans, especially Gen Z fans who follow players, not franchises. In their world, narrative equals numbers, and Sanders wasn't just part of a story, he was the story. So while the Browns celebrated in the locker room, the league was triaging a multi-layer commercial disaster. Staffers weren't fist-pumping. They were analyzing social reach percentages, pulling down ad campaigns, and reviewing language for trade protection clauses in media contracts. Even worse, that win handed the league something far more damaging than a loss. Proof. Real, measurable, commercial proof that without Sanders, the NFL loses engagement, merchandise momentum, advertiser trust, and international traction in a single night. That's the kind of data no coach's decision can firewall against. And now, Cleveland must confront the fact that they won the game, but may have cost the league millions in the process. In short, they won the battle, but may have triggered a war between old-school coaching values and the new entertainment-driven NFL ecosystem. And the fallout is still just beginning. What happened Friday night didn't just expose a marketing disaster. It cracked open a question NFL insiders have avoided asking for years. Who's actually running this league? The coaches or the players? Because if one rookie quarterback can shift viewer behavior, crash social media, tank betting numbers, and cause international partners to reconsider their deals, that's not just influence, that's power. And it's the kind of power that used to belong to sideline veterans and coaching legends. Now, it's shifting, fast. Inside Cleveland, the tension is unmistakable. Ownership reportedly wants Sanders on the field as much as possible. Sponsors and league officials are demanding his availability. Goodell has made it clear, national broadcasts aren't a testing ground. But Stefanski, he's standing his ground. He's not alone either. Plenty of old-school coaches across the league are nodding in agreement. Development matters, they argue. Rookies need time to mature. No coach wants their personnel decisions dictated by TikTok trends or international eyeballs. That's not football. It's showbiz. But the younger generation of coaches, they see the writing on the wall. The NFL has changed. Fans consume games like they consume Netflix, based on headline value, not weekly loyalty. Quarterbacks are the brand, and promoting that brand isn't optional anymore. It's essential. Pull that brand from a game and everything collapses. And now, the media's caught in the middle. Local Cleveland reporters say press conferences have turned hostile. Reporters feel stuck between defending a hometown staff and acknowledging that the product imploded without Sanders. They know fans no longer care why he sat. They only notice that he wasn't there. Former players are weighing in too. Some, like Shannon Sharp, blasted the Browns for sabotaging their golden goose. Charles Barkley called the incident nothing less than catastrophically stupid. These aren't casual takes, they're wake-up calls, because the modern fan isn't just watching games. They're following players like celebrities, influencers, brands. And when the product doesn't deliver the brand, fans simply click away. So now, we're left with a league torn in two directions. One stuck in tradition, where depth charts rule and players earn snaps over time. The other rooted in modern reality, where if your best guy sits, you might lose the revenue to pay everyone else. This isn't just a controversial moment, it's a full-blown power shift. And for the first time, everyone is realizing in 2025, the most powerful person in the NFL might be a rookie quarterback, not the guys holding the whistles. The Cleveland Browns walked away with a win on the scoreboard, but the NFL, it walked away with an existential crisis. Because this wasn't just about one rookie sitting out a preseason game. It was the moment the league realized something truly terrifying. The entire empire is built on borrowed attention. And that attention doesn't belong to the Shield anymore. It belongs to a single player, Shedeur Sanders. When he plays, the numbers are undeniable. Ratings spike. Social media explodes. International streams light up. Merchandise flies off shelves. Betting handles surge. Media coverage doubles. Algorithms push football content hard. But the moment he's not there, it all collapses. And Friday night proved it on every measurable level. 3 million people vanished. TikTok went silent. Jersey sales tanked. Fan sentiment flatlined. Fantasy football threads dried up. Sponsors started asking questions they've never asked before. Questions like, is this still a football league? Or is it now just a reality show where the stars are more valuable than the sport itself? Behind closed doors, the panic is real. Network executives are rewriting coverage plans. Graphics teams are being told, have 2 versions, one with Sanders and one without. Marketing departments are bracing for the unthinkable. What if he gets hurt? Because here's the nightmare scenario no one wanted to say out loud, until now. The NFL is one ACL tear away from watching its most valuable growth engine vanish in real time. That's not a storyline. That's a revenue model with a weak point. And that kind of fragility doesn't just scare execs, it shakes their confidence in the product itself. The NFL always sold us the game. Teams, rivalries, dynasties, toughness, loyalty. But what Friday proved, without question, is that modern reality looks very different. The fans follow stars, not always the ones with contracts, not always the ones with rings, but the ones with reach, the ones with buzz, the ones who turn games into events and moments into viral clips. Sanders has that. And the league has been happy to ride his momentum until the Browns made a decision that exposed just how fragile that momentum really is. Now, the NFL is scrambling. Goodell is facing internal backlash. Sponsors are threatening renegotiations. Foreign partners are questioning commitments. Coaching staffs are being asked if they'll prioritize narrative value over roster philosophy. It's a full-blown identity crisis. And worst of all, it's one the NFL created for itself. They built the spotlight, they fueled the hype, they monetized the moment, and they put it all on the shoulders of a 22-year-old rookie quarterback, then watched it all vanish the second he didn't walk onto the field. So while Cleveland's coaching staff gives interviews about signal caller depth and roster rotation, and while local media spins hopeful stories about a promising defensive unit, the real story is happening in the background, in tense, quiet rooms, where billion-dollar men are sitting at polished glass tables, trying to figure out what their entire league will look like the next time Shedeur Sanders misses a game. Because it's no longer about wins, or stats, or even football. The truth is this: the NFL doesn't just need Sanders to succeed, it needs him to play. Every single week. And that's not just pressure, that's total dependency, the kind that keeps powerful people awake at night. And after what happened Friday, they're all suddenly wide awake.